Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about how Todd Bowles just announced today on January 2nd that they will be playing all of their starters, presumably, against the Atlanta Falcons to end out the season. And I am not alone in this topic today. Joining me from 95.3 WDAE, my good friend and colleague, Zac Blobner. Zac, how you doing today, man?
I'm mad, bro. I'm livid. I cannot believe these guys are going to be playing against the Falcons in a meaningless football game. And I mean, listen, man. Ultimately I'm happy, right? The Bucs are in the postseason. They beat Carolina. They won the division. So you feel good if you're a Bucs fan, if you're a supporter of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a trivial conversation. It reminds me a lot of when we were in training camp, and the big chat was, who's the backup quarterback? Like, who cares at the end of the day? Brady's your guy. But now I feel like we've kind of moved back to those types of chats in terms of ones that really don't matter much right now. But because the Bucs have wrapped up the division in the playoff spot, we're back to arguing about these things that somehow, unfortunately, I feel way too passionate about.
Yeah, no, that is understandable, man. So listen, for those of you who do not know, Todd Bowles said today that they were going to play their starters. Tom Brady, I believe, said it was a before or after where Tom Brady said, we're football players. We play football. So it seems like the Bucs are all in on just, we're going to play our guys. Now, here's the caveat. Here's the thing with that, Zac, is they can't change their playoff positioning. Nothing they do will change the fact that they are going to have the fourth seed. They've won the NFC South for sure, like you said, and that's fantastic. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. That they are going to be the fourth seed. Point blank, simple as that. Now, who they play may depend on a couple of things. They might play, I believe it's like the Cowboys or the Eagles, one of those two teams, if that is
Yeah,
correct. So,
probably Dallas, unless the Eagles just completely continue their collapse.
right. So, that is a point to be made. And I saw you talk about this on Twitter for a few reasons, right? Is to say, hey, why don't they sit their starters, right? But I think one of the biggest things to look at first is, essentially like what you said, you called it a meaningless game in a way. Todd Bowles came out and said, well, we have some things to work on. And I will say that is accurate to some degree in some way, shape, or form on the
James, it's week
offense.
18. It's
Yeah,
week 18.
yeah, I know,
Ugh.
and it's just, yeah, I get it, man. I get it. What things are there to work on. Like, I will say I agree. Like, hey, man, if Todd Bowles thinks that Byron Leftwich needs another week to, I
Mhm.
guess, get into a groove or something like that, I mean, I'm give him all the time that he needs, I guess, because
Yeah,
a lot of people have been very, very critical of Byron Leftwich this year, myself included. I mean, it's completely understandable. The guy has not been a
absolutely.
good offensive coordinator this year, so it was a little bit of an interesting take from Todd Bowles there, and Tom Brady saying it as well. Saying we're football players, we play football. What are your thoughts and opinions on those quotes that were given?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, reps are good. Like, I'm not going to argue that. And I will never say at this point in the Buck season that they're a finished product in terms of not having things they can clean up, not having flaws that have been exposed often this year from other squads. Like, they're not a great team week to week. They're not consistent. So like, I'm not saying that they're so good that they should bench their starters or that they don't need the reps. The risk versus reward is the big thing for me. And it's whether we're talking about Brady wanting to be out there and continue his, ability to be on the field. He's only missed one game, or the one season with the ACL. Obviously, he missed a bunch of starts, and then the deflate gate, he missed four more. But for the most part, Brady over the course of its entire career has played these games. And I know the Bucs are huge on incentives, right? Getting their guys that are a catch away or 30 yards away, or a snap or two away from hitting different like bonuses in their contract. I know they love to get those guys their money. I don't know all of them by list, but I'm sure that
Right.
Byron has a sheet. That's something I'll give Byron credit for. Big players coach. He was this way the last 2 years too under Bruce. Like, he wants to get his guys their money, and I respect that. All that being said, it's risk versus reward. The practice that, or I guess growth you would find from those extra reps in a game against the Falcons are not worth the risk of a guy getting injured. And you think about okay, like maybe the offense will continue to click. For me, I feel the opposite way on top of it. Like they looked good against Carolina with Mike Evans catching some of those bombs. Chris Godwin had over 100 yards. Like Rashad White was getting more usage. Kate Otten didn't have a great game, but they still stuck with him and they made him the guy, the tight end, and healthy scratch great, right? So I thought the Bucs did a lot right in that game. I think there's more likelihood that if they play other starters for 4 quarters, not that they will for 4, but if they did, that they're more likely to take a step back because this team's been so inconsistent. For me, that's one of the reasons, but even more so, I don't want to see anybody get hurt, especially a guy like Tom Brady. And you think about Tristan Wirfs, he's been nursing an injury. Vita Vea has been nursing injuries. They both played this weekend, but I would rather have a week of rest extra for those guys than them playing a meaningless game for a few extra reps. Like, how much a team's going to grow on those few extra reps versus what an injury to a Wirfs, a Vea, let alone Tom Brady would mean to this football team. It's not even close. And that's my biggest issue is like, I understand there's two sides to the coin, but when one side weighs so much heavier and means so much more if it happens versus the other side, like they're not even guaranteed to grow with those reps, right? We've watched them for 17 weeks already. And there's been times where we think they're growing. And I know people will point out, well, like, don't you want to build on that momentum after Carolina? Did they build on, momentum after the Saints Monday night win where they came back? No, they got their ass kicked by the 49ers. So there's just so many things that I feel like people are reaching for. This is black and white. It's very obvious. You just don't play your guys in a meaningless game. You earned the ability by winning the division, by beating Carolina. You earned the ability to rest starters, to breathe and get better and fresher and healthier. And it's like you're not even going to take advantage of that. Like if you want to start guys for a series, fine. A quarter, I can live with it. A half, even that is too much to me. But at the end of the day, fine. But there is no world where any starter that's worthwhile, let alone one that's nursing an injury or is at the level of a Tom Brady or Mike Evans, should be playing past the first half. Like it's just, James, it's diabolically insane to do.
Now, for me, I'm a little give and take with it, right? Like I agree with you 100% where I think that not all of the crucial starters for the Bucs should be playing in the entirety of this game. And I think me and you both agree whenever it's said that, hopefully that won't happen. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Like you said, a series. Look, if you want to continue Tom Brady's like game started streak and all those other guys who are going to have streaks like that, great. Cool. That is awesome. If you want to have guys in there for just long enough to where they're going to get some incentives, I think that's good too. I think that those are all positive things, and I like seeing that from the coaching staff. But like you said, guys like Tom Brady, guys like Mike Evans, a lot of the defensive guys like Levante David, Devin White, some of the other guys who really need rest. Donovan Smith's been nursing injuries all throughout the year as well. There's been so many injury problems that have been on the Bucs this year that it's almost like you need to. It's not like this team's been coming in and has been healthy throughout most of the season. They have had so many guys injured in so many different position groups that you are running the risk of re-aggravating those injuries. I believe Tristan Wirfs said, or it came out last week that Tristan Wirfs had re-aggravated his ankle injury at some point. So you're running that risk again if you put him out there for an extended period of time. Now, if they're out there for a little bit, I don't hate it. In terms of the crucial guys that you look at, a Tristan Wirfs, maybe a Donovan Smith, Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and a lot of the names that come to people's minds immediately. In terms of extended play, maybe a guy like Chris Godwin can be out there for a little bit more. I believe he's only 32 yards away from 1,000, so that would be good. Maybe a guy like Sean Murphy-Bunting, some of those rotational guys like an Anthony Nelson, a Joe Tryon-Shawinka, guys who, can continue to bolster their stats and continue to get more game time reps. That I can also understand as well. But a big thing I want to talk about here, Zach, and you brought it up on Twitter, and you were going to war over it, and I really and I sat there and I looked at your points with it, and I thought, yeah, that's understandable. Getting a significant look at Kyle Trask. That, I think, is a big thing to see in there as well. If he can get some game reps with a guy like Chris Godwin. Kate Otten, I think, would be very beneficial to, play a whole game in there as well. Kyle Trask can develop some chemistry with him. Maybe some of these starting offensive linemen that are there. Rashad White. A lot of those guys who are starters on this team right now and can be starters in the next year or two, that could be good for Trask's chemistry. And also, like you said on Twitter, just to get a look at him. So what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, there's definitely players that you can get in there that are starters. Like just from a numbers game, you can't bench every starter. I understand that. I
Right.
do think guys like you mentioned, K Dot and JTS. I don't know if I love Godwin in there because remember he's coming off a major injury. He's been getting
Right.
stronger every week, which is awesome. But coming off that injury, I don't know if I want to test it. There's other guys though, Rashad Perryman, you can get in the mix. Russell Gage, I know he's been banged up, but I think he's a guy that can use the reps. Scotty Miller, we haven't heard or seen of much. Devin Tompkins, we've been seeing in the return game. Maybe he gets more in the receiving game. But I think with Trask, it just makes more sense. I don't. The only argument in my mind, again, I try to base most of my stuff off logic. Like I have opinions and I have things that like I feel passionate about. That just because I went to Florida, like I like the Gators. I'd like to see Gator players for the most part do well when they reach the next level. But I'm not pulling for Kyle Trask because he played at Florida. I'm pulling for him now because he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and he's a quarterback that could potentially be in the mix for their future after Brady retires or goes elsewhere. Just like I supported Jameis Winston. He was a Florida State guy. I didn't care when he got to the Bucs. Then he was the Bucs quarterback. That's how I peg these guys. That's how the players look at it. They don't care. I mean, they'll have like side bets and fun with the college stuff. They don't care though. Their jersey is where they're at now, and they put a lot of pride in that. With Trask though, the way I look at it, the one argument people have is that if he was good, he would have beat out Blaine Gabbert. That the Bucs are already done with him. I'll say this: if the Bucs have already closed the book and they're like Kyle Trask sucks, he's never going to be our guy. We already know enough about him that we don't need to see him. Fine, don't play him. But if there's even a 1% chance that you think he still might be a guy that could be your future, there's zero reason not to give him significant reps and time and real game action against Atlanta as opposed to letting Brady go 4 quarters or even giving Gabbert 2 quarters. Because listen, I understand Gabbert is the guy that knows the system better. He's the veteran. He's going to be the backup in the playoffs. If at any point Brady's hurt and Gabbert's in, the Bucs are screwed anyways. And this goes back to the reps argument, right? Like giving Gabbert a half against the Falcons isn't going to change the Bucs scenario if he's thrust into playing that wild card game or anywhere in the postseason for the Bucs. But putting Trask in there and giving him a chance to show some things that he's learned or picked up along the way is something that actually could benefit the Bucs one way or another. Look, I'm not even putting my crown on him and saying he's the next guy, and I think that's where a lot of my conversation gets like taken from people on Twitter,
Misconstrued.
misconstrued for sure. Because I think people see it, James, and they're like, "Oh, Zach thinks Trask is the guy," and they want to argue with me about that and say that he sucks. And I'm like, he might be the worst quarterback they've ever drafted, but we only have some preseason film on him, which is if that's what you're basing his future on, like don't try to talk football. Watch it, enjoy it, but don't try to talk football. If you're basing it on his college tape and that's like a damning factor, that doesn't make sense because he's a guy who played well at Florida when he was given opportunities, who looked good against Alabama prior to that bowl season, blowout where he shouldn't have probably played, but that's a separate subject. So they've got practice film, or they don't even have practice film. They're just basing it on the fact that he hasn't beat out Blaine Gabbert, which look, again, I understand the opinions on that. Like if he was any good at all, he would have beat out Gabbert. I don't think he's been given the chance to. I really don't. I think the Bucs with Brady, because Brady and Gabbert can look at tape and stuff. It's not about who's the better quarterback to come in if Brady's not in there. It's about the better quarterback that can be a sounding board and a guy that Brady can bounce stuff off of during the games. And I think Gabbert being a vet and knowing the NFL so much better, like it's clear that he's that guy. Like maybe Trask does look significantly better at practice, or maybe the Bucs do believe in Trask a lot more as a technically number 2 backup over Gabbert, but it doesn't matter because Blaine is the vet and he's the one that helps Brady more in game. And again, if you're on your backup quarterback, you're probably screwed anyways, especially in the postseason. So I just every way you look at it, unless the Bucs have completely 100% closed the book on Trask and his future with them, which is crazy. Like I don't think anybody believes that. Like even if you think that they've said, oh, they don't think he's that good, you're telling me the Bucs have 100% decided that Trask is not the guy in the future. That's a hard sell for me. I mean, if it is the case, keep him inactive. But don't be surprised if we roll around to Sunday against Atlanta and he's active. And if he's active, he's going to get reps. He's going to see time.
Yeah, one situation I think of, in regards to that is, what the Jets have done with Mike White and
Yeah.
with Zach Wilson. Now, obviously, in the case of Zach Wilson, he eventually got benched, but then they didn't. I was sitting there for the whole second half of the season. I was like, why aren't they playing Joe Flacco? That's so bizarre. It's a vet quarterback. He's their backup. Wouldn't he, have the chance to win them games? And that might have been the case. But to your point, Zach, is if they're looking for a long-term guy, give Mike White a shot. He was a draft pick of theirs, and then they'll know or they won't know. And that's why a lot of uh, people have been saying like, yeah, no, Jets fans I've been seeing talk about that is just been, well, at least now we'll know that, hey, Mike White isn't the guy, or Mike White is the guy, and that's a similar thing that you can do in this scenario with Kyle Trask. If he doesn't work out, okay, well, he doesn't work out. If he does
Yeah.
work out, he does work out in this game. But at least now you have more information, and
Yep.
that's the most important thing. You take a guy in the second round, and it's been a couple of years now. We barely know anything about the guy and what he can do. Going up against a defense like the Atlanta Falcons in a regular season game, presumably the Falcons are going to play their starters the whole game, would be
Yeah.
very valuable experience for Kyle Trask.
With no risk. There's
Right.
no risk, James. You lose nothing putting Trask in there. If I gave you 100 scratch-off tickets and you knew the likelihood of hitting on one of them was like pretty much non-existent and becoming a millionaire, you're not just going to throw the scratch-off tickets away. You're still going to scratch all 100 of them. That's what they have with Kyle Trask this weekend, man. I'm telling you.
Right. So I do think that Trask does warrant some playing time, and obviously it'll be very telling depending on when the inactives come out.
Yeah.
Kyle Trask is inactive. Well, okay, that's sad, but for that just sucks for Kyle Trask. But
Yeah.
if he is active,
Yeah.
and maybe a guy like Blaine Gabbert is inactive, or they have all three quarterbacks active, so Trask can have sounding board, like you said, a good point to make is a sounding board situation from Brady and Blaine Gabbert. I think that'd be a cool thing to see, and it would give the Bucs some more information. Even if it's a little bit of information, Zach, it's better than nothing, and it'll give the Bucs a clear idea of what they might need to do moving forward. And we don't know who the Buccaneers quarterback's going to be after this season, Zach. So again, that's another point to that. See what you have in your current guy, because it's not a guarantee Brady's going to be back. Of course not. It's technically not even a guarantee that Blaine Gabbert's going to be back. Kyle Trask is the only quarterback under contract after this season. So give the guy a look, because you want to give yourself some semblance of an idea of what you've got just in case, right? And I think that that's a very, very important thing to see, Zach. So I do agree with you on that front. And the last thing I want to talk about here is this. It's a question. Do we see Ryan Jensen out there? Now, he's been practicing a little bit this week in terms of personal type stuff with the trainers and whatnot. The assumption is going to be he's going to be practicing a little bit more this week. Do you put him out there and get him some game reps? Do you think he could even be out there based on what you've been seeing and hearing and whatnot with him recovering from his injury? He's been out for 5 months now. What are your thoughts on that possibility?
So I will say that that's the one scenario. Now it's complex, but that's the one scenario where I'm like, okay, you want to get the offensive line, your starting guys with Jensen, a chance at least to play a series or two together before the playoffs. If you plan to start Jensen against, again, the Cowboys or the Eagles, most likely Dallas, fine, get that. But it's hard for me to believe that Jensen health-wise wouldn't be further along in a week after the Atlanta game than he is right now. Now, I'm not a doctor, and let's be honest, this whole situation has been so mysterious with Ryan. I mean, look, man, you got people over there. I got people over there. Everybody I know that has people over there, shoot, the people over there. Like, nobody knows what the hell's going on. Like, it's been so under wraps, and I credit the Bucs, for keeping it under wraps to the point where we really don't know the extent of a lot that went on the last 5 months since he got hurt and his knee was all jacked up. All we know is that he's back, at least to practicing a little bit. But let's just say, for whatever reason, health-wise, they say, listen, he's not going to be a ton healthier if he doesn't play this week and plays next week versus playing this week and next week. Now, given barring injuries can happen and things are crazy, and that's another reason I don't want to see starters in there, let alone for a long time. But if the risk of Ryan Jensen is the same this week as it'll be next week, and he isn't going to be much further along health-wise and better off health-wise, which, again, isn't something I subscribe to. I doubt that. Just not being a doctor, like, that just doesn't make sense to me. I just feel like he would be a lot better off waiting the extra week, getting that extra practice under his belt for another week. But if for whatever reason medical staff clears them, they're good. They're like, let him play. It's no different now than it will be a week from now. Yeah, then it makes a ton of sense to get him out there and see what he can look like with the ones for a series or two, if not longer. Like, that's the scenario where I'm like, yeah, it makes sense to have Brady behind him and Wirfs and Smith and the rest of the offense out there for, again, a series or two or maybe even a quarter. I just don't believe that it's going to make sense for him health-wise. Again, just on the fact that it is a major knee injury and he hasn't played. But there's so much mystery around it that, man, I'm not counting anything out. Like, the Bucs could come out this week and Todd Bowles Thursday could be like, yeah, Jensen's been practicing. He's got the green light. We're going to try him out there. At that point, yeah. But I just, again, on a basic surface level, from a medical standpoint, find it hard to believe that the extra week off wouldn't help him too.
Yeah, no, I gotta agree with you there. Like we said, Zach, or like you said, man, it's gonna be interesting. Like we don't know what's going on with Jensen right now
So weird.
with his medical stuff. I mean, so many different types of rumors, reports, and everything in between, man. I do agree where it's like, yeah, for chemistry purposes and just getting the 5 months of rust off of Jensen, maybe put him out there for a series of two. But maybe if he's comfortable longer, he says, okay, well, I can keep on going. But like what we said with Godwin and some of these other guys, Wirfs, do you really want to run that risk of re-injury? It's such a delicate situation with that stuff, Zach. So I think me and you are both in agreement, right? A little bit of give and take. Hey, if you want to play those guys a little bit until they can get their incentives or continue their streaks of playing and all these different types of things, that's good. But it is also something to heavily consider that, hey, maybe after a series or two, maybe after a quarter, maybe you start playing some of those younger guys, like your quarterback, who you still need to figure out some stuff about. Or some of your young pass rushers or some of your backups, rookies who can get some more snaps. That, I think, is a solid plan in my opinion. So, Zach, before we go ahead and finish off this video, do you have any final words for anybody watching?
Yeah, again, just quick on the subject. Like, to me, I view it a lot like blackjack. You're gambling by putting those guys out there, and it's just like anything. Whether it is blackjack or even poker. If you sit at the table long enough, like, you're gonna get burnt. Like, so if you play these guys or some of these dudes for a series or two, like, every time you put them back out there, you're daring Lady Luck to fight back. And rarely do us mere mortals win those bouts, those gambles. So I just hope Todd's careful. I hope, they handle themselves right. And again, fingers crossed, that nothing crazy major happens on the medical side. I'm pretty much across the same on social. If anybody wants to find me, at Zac on the mic, ZAC on the mic. That's Instagram, that's Twitter, that's Facebook. You can get at me all those ways. And then Monday through Friday, part of the new 12 to 3 show, Jay and Z with Jay Retcher and myself. Again, every weekday on 95.3 WDAE, the iHeartRadio app. You can find us from 12 noon till 3 o'clock. And we'll be there tomorrow, and I'll be yelling about Trask and the Bucs starters as much as I am right here with you, James.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait to listen to it. Folks, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let us know your thoughts and opinions on everything that we talked about down in the comments section below. Do you think the Buccaneers should play their starters throughout the entirety of the game? What do you think about the possibility of Trask playing and some of these other younger guys, and maybe even the possibility of Ryan Jensen making his return in this final week of the regular season as well? Let us know your guys' thoughts and opinions. We'd love to hear them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. We will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.